Hello everybody, Michael here for Tactica Imperialis with episode 6 of Codex Analysis Tyranids. This is the final episode in which we will be going over the heavy support as well as getting my final thoughts on the Codex as a whole. So the heavy support is kind of like the elite section in that you generally take a lot of units out of it. However, that only really applies in big games because this section contains basically all of the biggest units in the book. If your typical Tyranid monstrous creature, Tyranids like toughness 6 wounds, ridiculously good saves, OP weapons, never die, the classic Tyranid monsters, yeah, they're in here. So this section is expensive, but it's powerful. So the first unit is the Carnifex Prude. There are 120 points for a Carnifex, which is weapon skill, ballistic skill 3, strength 9, toughness 6 with 4 wounds, initiative 2, 3 attacks, leadership 7, and a 3+ save monstrous creature. And with 2 pairs of Slithing Talons, meaning it will get an extra attack in melee. It is fearless with instinctive behavior feed, and is a living battering ram, meaning that it can hit with D3 Hammer of Wrath attacks instead of 1. So that means that when it charges in, it does D3 strength 9 hits, and then attacks, which is quite scary. You can include an additional 2 Carnifexes, meaning that a full-size Brood will cost you 360 points. Any model may replace 1 pair of Slithing Talons with Crushing Claws for 15 points. This gives you a +1 strength Armor Bane unwieldy weapon, meaning you lose 1 initiative, but you become strength 10 with Armor Bane. You can still attack with your Slithing Talons if initiative 2 is that important to you. You're up against a lot of guys with Power Fists who are toughness 4, where strength 10 is irrelevant. You can still use your Slithing Talons. Any model may take a monstrous biocannon or biomorphs list. They are not there, they're there. So you may take a Twin Link Death Spitter for 5 points, which gives you a weapon that is 18-inch, strength 5, AP 5, assault 3. Not a bad weapon. For 5 points, Twin Linked Devourer with Brain Leech Worms, which is 18-inch, strength 6, AP nothing, assault 6, the classic high tyrant weapon, and it could also work on Carnifexes as well, although their ballistic skill is a bit worse. A Stranglethorn Cannon or a Heavy Venom Cannon. You cannot have more than one model, and you can't have both, as it is, I think you're only allowed to have... Oh no, you could replace 2 pairs of Silent Talons with weapons, but you cannot have both a Stranglethorn Cannon and a Heavy Venom Cannon, nor can you have 2 of them. So Stranglethorn Cannon, as I talked about in the last episode, 36-inch range, strength 6, AP 5, assault 1, large blast pinning. Pretty decent weapon for anti-infantry purposes. Venom Cannon, or the Heavy Venom Cannon should I say, 36-inch, strength 9, AP 4, assault 1, blast. Complements the Carnifex slightly better due to the high strength and a better AP value, because the Carnifex is generally better suited to taking out heavy infantry and vehicles with its high strength attacks. Personally, in terms of biocannons, you don't generally see Carnifexes run much. I think Twin Link Devourers and Brain Leech Worms is the common use because they're more adaptable. They'll glance most vehicles, they'll kill most infantry on high strength. They're AP nothing, but that's not really an issue. Other than that, I think if you've got points to spend, a Heavy Venom Cannon for 20 points is good. If you don't, a Twin Link Death Spitter for 5 is pretty good. In terms of biomorphs, you may take Toxin Sacks. Rerollable 4s in melee instead of 2s. I'd rather have the 2+ to wound because it gives your melee attacks poisoned. Acid Blood, this is kind of good if you want to tool your Carnifexes up for melee, because they can do damage to units that hit them in melee. Adrenal Glands, Furious Charge basically invalidates the need for Crushing Claws apart from having Armor Bane, and gives you Fleet, meaning you're more likely to actually make it to melee and get those Hammer of Wrath hits in. Regeneration is good. It is good, but because Carnifexes only actually have 4 wounds, they're actually a little bit weaker with regen than other monster creatures that I'm going to go to later in this video. I mean, I'm not saying it's bad, but it's 30 points. It's quite expensive. Any model may take any of the following. It may take Spine Banks for 5 points. Now, Spine Banks is 8-inch range, strength 3, AP nothing, assault 1, blast. It's basically a frag grenade without an AP value, which is alright, I suppose. Kind of pointless, though. Or Bioplasma, 20 points, which is a Blast Plasma Pistol, 12-inch range, strength 7, AP 2, assault 1, blast. Good weapon. It's kind of expensive though for a short-range plasma pistol, although if you're about to go into melee with Terminators, it is very, very useful and it doesn't get hot. That, I think, just about covers it. May also take one of the following tail biomorphs. May take a Thresher Scythe, which is Strength 4, AP 4, melee rending, 10 points, not bad. Or a Bone Mace, which is Strength 8, AP nothing, melee unwieldy, which complements the Carnifex a lot better with its high strength. It can damage vehicles. It doesn't have any AP value, which is something to consider, but it is kind of good, and its initiative 1 isn't that bad considering your initiative 2 anyway. Overall, Carnifexes are your classic monstrous creature. They're strong, they're tough, and they can do a lot of damage if you let them. But their save is not great, and they're only a tiny bit tougher than a Hive Tyrant, and they can't fly. So things like crack missiles do a lot of damage, plasma guns, all those sorts of things deal with Carnifexes very, very nicely. Best done in blobs of 2 or 3, but you can't always afford that. Biovores, 40 points each. Weapon skill, ballistic skill 3, strength 4, toughness 4, 3 wounds, initiative 2 to attacks, leadership 6, and a 4+ save, which is slightly worse than a Tyranid warrior. You lose some weapon skill, you lose some initiative, you lose an attack, and you lose a ton of leadership. It is very bulky with instinctive behavior hunt, which is the best one for it because it is a shooting type of unit with a Spore Mine Launcher. Now, Spore Mine Launcher is 48 inch range, strength 4, AP 4, assault 1, barrage, large blast, which is a nice set of weaponry, and also has Spore Burst, meaning that if the weapon misses for whatever reason, if no models are hit, so like nobody gets touched by the template, you place a Spore Mine cluster of D3 before you move the blast marker. I talked about Spore Mine clusters in the last episode. If you want to have a quick recap, there'll be a link to the playlist in the description. And you may include additional 2 biomorphs for 40 points, full squad 120. Biovores are taken a lot because they are cheap shooting units, and that's really, really kind of useful because to just pummel things like Tau Fire Warriors while they're shooting you is really, really useful, and Tyranids can't do that at range, so Biovores give you a cheap option to do that. As a result, Biovores are run in many armies. Now we get to the really big boys. Trigons. 190 points for a monstrous creature that is weapon skill 5, ballistic skill 3, strength 6, toughness 6, with 6 wounds, initiative 4, 5 attacks, leadership 8, and a 3+ save. It has deep strike, fearless, fleet, instinctive behavior, feed, and subterranean assault, which is really, really nasty. So basically, it scatters like a drop pod. Reduce the deep strike scatter to avoid impassable terrain. Mark the final position of its deep strike arrival. So after it moves, mark where it was. In subsequent turns, friendly Tyranid infantry may arrive from reserve from the same point, 1 unit per turn. Place these units wholly within 6 inches of the centre of the marker. Models that cannot be placed are destroyed. They cannot move or charge in the turn they arrive, but may shoot or run. It basically becomes a board edge for you to bring 1 infantry unit per turn. So a 30-man Gaunt squad, a shooty Tyranid Warriors squad, possibly, not Raveners, possibly some Spore Mines if you really want to get them closer and blow them up. Lictors, Pyrovores. Pyrovores could do really well coming out of there. Hive Guard, Zoanthropes, Venomthropes, Gaunts, obviously, Gene Stealers. Those sorts of units could all be quite useful coming out of there. It's armed with 2 pairs of Silent Talons and a Bioelectric Pulse, which is 12 inch range, strength 5, AP 5, assault 6. It's a short range Death Spitter on steroids. It's got twice as many shots, but it loses some range. The fact you're deep striking mitigates this fact. It's just good, particularly against low save armies like Guard and Orcs. Tyranids seem to have a very good speciality against those types of things. It may take biomorphs. I've already covered these, so Adrenal Glands, Regeneration, Toxin Sacs, and Acid Blood. I think Acid Blood is really good in combo with Regen, obviously, because you can heal yourself, so your Acid Blood can keep going off. Regen, though, does take your Trigon to 220, which is quite expensive. It may take a Tail Biomorph, a Prehensile Pincer, which is Strength 6, AP 5, or a Toxin Spike, which is Strength 1, AP 6, but Poisoned 2+, meaning that you basically get another attack that wounds on a 2, but it is not AP 2 because it is independent of the fact that you're a monstrous creature. Trigons are just good. The problem they might have is when they arrive, they are subject to instinctive behavior. So you want to have a unit that can keep up with them or arrive with them. Tyranid Shrikes, Flying Hive Tyrants, just to keep the Trigon under control. Otherwise, an opponent might be clever and bait it into a position where it's going to have to charge some unit and get bogged down forever. Example, Plague Bearers. There is a way around this, though, and it's called the Trigone Prime, which has an identical stat line, absolutely identical, except it's leadership 10 instead of leadership 5. Leadership 8, sorry, and it costs 230 points. It has 2 pairs of Silent Talons and a Bioelectric Pulse with containment spines, meaning that it becomes 18-inch range, strength 5, AP 5, assault 12. This thing carries 4 Death Spitters, basically. So, take everything that's good about Death Spitters and then quadruple it. That's really scary on the turn it arrives. It has Deep Strike, Fleet, and Subterranean Assault, like the regular Trigone, but it also has Shadow in the Warp and Synapse Creature, meaning it is not subject to instinctive behavior, and is of course fearless due to being a Synapse Creature. That's really, really nasty, and if you have lots of units that have Deep Striked in, like Lictors or something, bringing in a Trigone Prime just brings them back under control, which is really, really nice. It may take Biomorphs and Tyranid Bio Artifacts. These are the Relics. I haven't covered these since episode 1, so I'll briefly go over them. You could take the Maw Claws of Thyrax if you want to give yourself a preferred enemy. The Miasma Cannon, a really nice surprise weapon when you arrive. The Norn Crown for better Synapse control. The Imgal Factor, which could be really nice to give yourself +1 toughness, or get 2+ save, or get strength, or get an extra attack. Or the Reaper of Obliterax if you want to go really, really fast, because you'll be initiative 7. And like the Trigone, it may take a Prehensile Pincer or a Toxin Spike for 10 points. Trigone Primes are everything that's good about Trigones, combined with everything that's good about Hive Tyrants, apart from the flying thing. They are super tough, super resilient, and have access to some relics that make them even better. And they're Synapse creatures, which is really kind of ridiculous, meaning that those gaunts that come in via Subterranean Assault surround the Trigone are not going to be subject to instinctive behavior because it's Trigone Prime. They are very, very expensive though, so if you wanted to stick it with the Norn Crown and Regen, just as an example, or the Imgal Factor and Regen, it costs you 300 points. So it is quite a point sink, but it's probably worth it in big games. If you want a big monstrous creature and don't have the points, you could run a Morlock, which has a very similar stat line to a regular Trigone. Costs 140 points, and is weapon skill 3, so that's a problem. BS 0, not that that matters. Strength toughness 6, 6 wounds, initiative 4, 3 attacks, leadership 8, 3+ save. It has Deep Strike, Fearless, Hit and Run, and Instinctive Behavior Feed, which is kind of nice. It has a rule called Burrow. So a Morlock that's not engaged in melee can enter ongoing reserves from its movement phase from game turn 2 onwards. It cannot Deep Strike and Burrow in the same turn, so you can't just come in and go out again. Now the reason Burrow is good is because of its other special rule, Terror of the Deep. Or Terror from the Deep, sorry, I can't read. A Morlock may choose to Deep Strike onto another model. You can place this anywhere that's a model. I mean, the impassable terrain is still a no-no, but you can literally come in underneath a unit. That's the Morlock's gimmick. If, after scattering, the Morlock is Deep Striking onto another model, place the large blast marker directly where the Morlock is arriving. So when you bring your Morlock in, I suggest you do it with a small coin. Rather than the Morlock itself, because that doesn't matter, use a small coin so you know exactly where it's arriving instead of guessing where the middle of the base is. And then place a large blast marker over it. And non-flying models hit by this, so flyers and flying monster creatures get away with it, suffer a Strength 6 AP2 hit with ignores cover. Vehicles are hit on the side armor. That's ridiculously good. Literally, it's a Strength 6 AP2 pie plate that just appears under you and you don't even get a cover save against it. Then place the Morlock if you can. If you can't, do it again. Place another large blast and hit everybody else that's still under it with another Strength 6 AP2 hit. So you basically, whenever you bring a Morlock in, get 1 or 2 Strength 6 AP2 pie plates to drop on your opponent that have already scattered. That's really nice. And if the first one clears a hole, your Morlock's in. If it doesn't, it goes again. If the second one doesn't clear a hole, you mishap. So there is an innate risk to Terror from the Deep. If you can make it work that you know you can clear that hole, it works beautifully. But if you can't clear a hole, there's a chance you'll kill yourself. Let me point that out to you. It may take Biomorphs. Regeneration is nice. Acid Blood is nice. General monstrous creature Biomorphs, really. May take a Prehensile Pincer or a Toxin Spike. The issue with Morlocks is that they are terrible in melee, believe it or not. They're weapon skill 3 with 3 attacks. They stink in melee. They suck. I mean, yes, they take an hour to kill, but they can't hit crap. And that means that if they get locked in melee, they can't burrow, and they can't come back up again with terror from the deep to deep strike back in, which is a problem. So you have to be aware when you bring your Morlock in via terror from the deep, whatever you eat, if you leave anything alive around it, that thing is going to charge you, and you're never going to get to burrow again unless you can clear them out, and that might not work. So it's a calculated risk, and I think it's powerful. For 140 points, it's really quite nice. You can give it Acid Blood. I think Acid Blood is the best biomorph here, because you're not going to get to charge, but being able to do extra hits, things in melee allows you to clear them out a little bit faster. Then we have the Exocrine, or Exocrine, depends on who you ask. 170 points. Weapon skill, ballistic skill 3, strength 6, toughness 6 with 5 wounds, initiative 3, 3 attacks, leadership 7, 3 plus save. It is armed with scything talons and a bioplasmic cannon, which is sort of a super plasma cannon. It's got 2 fire modes. In blast mode, it is 24-inch range, strength 7, AP 2, assault 1, large blast. It's a pipe plate plasma gun. And in streams mode, 24-inch range, strength 7, AP 2, assault 6. Assault 6. 6 plasma gunshots. Yes, it's short ranged, but who cares? That's 3 hits. 3 plasma gunshots to the face is a bad thing. It is fearless with instinctive behavior hunt, which is really quite nice, and it has something called symbiotic targeting. Because the Morlock is not Morlock. The Exocrine is controlled by its gun because it's a dumbass. So it is controlled by the gun. So if the Exocrine doesn't move, it gets +1 ballistic skill. But it can't declare a charge during the same turn that it uses this special rule. Yeah. So that becomes BS4. That's really quite nasty. And because of instinctive behavior hunt, the fact that you probably won't be moving anyway because of your instinctive behavior if you get left behind means, great. Yeah, a couple turns you might have to move because it's got such short range. But once you're in position, lock in place and let rip. And if you can get the preferred enemy on this instinctive behavior hunt, if you get left behind for whatever reason, that's scary. Metic biomorphs, you're not going to go into melee, so things like Acid Blood are not that useful, Adrenal Glands and stuff. But you may want to consider regen, considering how tanky this thing could be. And it may take a Thresher Scythe if you wish, which I'll remind you is strength 4, AP 4, rending in melee, just giving it an extra attack really. It's nothing special. The Exocrine is best used behind a screen. So having a Turbigon next to an Exocrine allows you to spawn gaunts to protect the Exocrine of the Turbigon while they spawn out or kill more stuff. Finally, the Tyrannifex, Rowan's favourite unit. So this thing is weapon skill, ballistic skill 3, strength 6, toughness 6 with 6 wounds, so it's as tough as a Trigone. Initiative 2, 3 attacks, leadership 8, and a 2+ save. 2+. So try killing this in a hurry, and it costs 175 points. It's armed with a Stinger Salvo, which is 18-inch, strength 5, AP 4, assault 4, which is not a bad gun, and an Acid Spray, which is basically a Hellhound Inferno Cannon. So it's a Flamer template, strength 6, AP 4, assault 1, torrent, which is really nice. I mean, this thing against things like Tau, Eldar, everything worse than a Space Marine basically, is a beast. It just kills everything. It's fearless and it has instinctive behavior hunt. Is this the best instinctive behavior? Probably, considering some of the upgrades it can have. It marries its Acid Spray with a Flesh Borer Hive for 5 points, which gives it 18-inch range, strength 4, AP 5, assault 20. So think about an Imperial Guard Punisher Gatling Cannon. That's 24-inch range, strength 5, AP dash, assault 20. This thing is like 10 bolt guns, or 20 bolt guns, should I say, with a slightly shorter range. That's ridiculously good. I mean, yes, your ballistic skill is 3, so you're not going to hit that many, only about 10. But still, that's a lot of shots against things like Guard. I'm scared of it. Alternatively, you can spend 30 points to take a Rupture Cannon, which is 48-inch range, strength 10, AP 4, assault 2. Vehicles, look out. This thing is a beast at killing vehicles, because it just shoots 2 strength 10 shots. Yeah, okay, the AP is not 2. Meaning that Marines get a save, which is bad, and vehicles can't get blown up, which is bad, but you can take 2 hull points off. Nobody cares anymore. So Tyrannifexes are great at vehicle killing and so resilient, which is only made worse by the fact that they can take biomorphs, giving them access to regeneration. For 205 points, you have a toughness 6, 6 wound monster creature with a 2+ save, and super it will not die. How do you expect to kill that? No idea. Never been done, at least that I've seen. My advice, get something that causes instant death. Force weapons. Or something. And it may also take thorax biomorphs. Now, what are thorax biomorphs? I haven't seen those in a long time. May take electroshock grubs for 10 points, desiccator larvae for 10 points, or shredder shard beetles for 10 points. Desiccator larvae is a strength 1 AP nothing, assault 1 fleshbane flamer, which complements the acid spray quite nicely. The electroshock grubs is a template strength 5 AP 5 assault 1 haywire, which complements the rupture cannon quite nicely, although the range is kind of terrible. It also goes well with the flesh borer hive. And the shredder shard beetles, flamer template, strength 3 AP nothing, assault 1 rending shred. Pretty nice. Probably goes best with the flesh borer hive or the acid spray. And that is the heavy support section. So the Carnifexes are classic, punchy, really good against vehicles, but not as resilient as some of the other creatures. My advice is either go full melee or go full ranged. Don't compromise. Biovores are just good, they're cheap, they're effective, and they're powerful. And if they do miss, you have some spore mines. Trigone is fantastic, it's expensive, but it's damn powerful, and it will always come in where you need it, and then bringing units behind it. Lick to pheromone trails, bring it into the right place, and then start the subterranean assault. Trigone Primes, everything good about Trigones, only better, because it has synapse giving you control over those units that come flying out of the tunnels. And it may take relics, which is ridiculous. Morlocks are situationally amazing, but if they get locked in melee, they're a dead unit, basically. They don't do anything. Exocrines, great at range, but they're actually quite short-ranged. But I still think they're a good unit. Kind of expensive, though, perhaps. Tyrannifexes, unkillable. In most cases, if you give them regen, they're just about unkillable. Particularly with the Rupture Cannon, they can just sit at the back of the board and take it. And give away more than they take. So, yeah, the heavy support section is expensive but powerful, kind of like I said at the beginning of the video. And that is the end of the Codex. So I'm just going to pause the video, and I'm going to gather my thoughts, and then I'll come back and I'm going to give my final thoughts on the Tyranids as a whole. I'll be right back. So, we're done with the Tyranids Codex. Through the magic of video editing, it's the next day, basically. I've had a bit more time to mull it over, and I've actually left school now. So I'm going to have more time free to make some content. Anyway, Tyranids. Let's talk about them. So what I've come to realise is that Tyranids are good. They're a good army. But they have a few weaknesses that make them very easy to beat if you know what you're doing and or you've got the right army. So Tyranids pack a lot of AP4, AP5 power. At range. They have a lot of guns that are AP4 and AP5, meaning that they deal very well with light infantry. Imperial Guardsmen, Orc Boys, Tau Fire Warriors, Eldar Guardians, and the like go down very easily to Tyranids, because basically everybody gets access to AP5, except Hormagaunts, because stuff Hormagaunts. But they'll deal really well with that. When it comes to Marines or other elite armies, they don't stack up quite so well. I mean, they're good, and they'll kill stuff. You see that, but they are not going to get through power armor in a hurry most of the time because they don't have very much AP3 in their locker. They just have a metric ton of shots, which makes them doubly good against light infantry because all those shots ignore the armor save. The problem I think Tyranids have is that they are very short ranged. The average range on a gun is probably 18 inches, or maybe even 12 in a lot of cases. There's a lot of 12-inch range, there's a lot of 18. Not much goes past 24. I mean, there are exceptions, but not much goes beyond range 24 on a gun, which is a problem. Which means that against armies like Tau, or armies like Campy Guard, or a well set up Marine army, they can get outshot quite easily. And that's not a good thing if you're a Tyranid player, meaning you are forced, and I mean this, you are forced to push up the board. And if you don't, you die at range, because that's how it works. The other weakness Tyranids have is that, well, there's two more. One is that their melee is quite weak. There are some dedicated melee units, I grant you, like Trigones, Morlocks, Hormagaunts, but most of them kind of suck. Morlocks are crap in melee. Hormagaunts only win by sheer numbers, like they are guardsmen with more attacks, and that's it. Oh, and AP6, I suppose, but when does AP6 ever matter? orcs. But they don't do that well in melee. They can run a close combat army if you want them to, but they won't do it very well. Their best position is about 18 inches away, because they're not going to be charged and they can unleash a ton of shots, which is a good thing. Their other weakness is, well, I see it as a really bad weakness. Rowan, who I spoke to today, doesn't see it the same way. I think synapse and instinctive behavior is really damaging. It's a blessing and a curse. I mean, it's great because you make your whole army fearless. As an orc player, I'd love to do that, but I can't. Tyranids can, and that's a good thing. But it does mean that if your synapse creatures gets picked off, and Tyranid warriors are particularly vulnerable to this, then you are left with wholes of your army killing each other, running away, or not doing anything because they go to ground half the time. And a lot of the units that do that have pretty bad leadership. I mean, there are exceptions. I mean, Trigones are leadership 8, Morlocks are, I think, was leadership 8, but Gaunts are like leadership 5 and 6. And if they turn tail on you, if they're objective camping, you're screwed. If they turn on eat each other when they're about to launch a charge, you're screwed. And that's a real problem. So my advice to a Tyranid player is get a lot of synapse. Whether you intend to run a lot of instinctive behavior or not, having synapse in your army is important. Because one, it makes everything fearless, which is great in the era of pinning checks and morale sapping thingies. It's great. And it also gives you, in most cases with synapse creatures, access to Shadow in the Warp, which really, really screws up Eldar and Grey Knights and Demons, assuming you can use it properly. And yeah, it also gives you some control if you need it. I would consider that there are two ways to run a Tyranid army. There is the army that I often see with mini wargaming Battrets, where you run a lot of Bioballs, a lot of Zone Thropes, a lot of Venom Throats, a lot of cheese, basically. Or you run the Living Carpet. I love the Living Carpet, but I know it's expensive to do in terms of money, if not in points, and it relies on Venom Thropes a lot, Zone Thropes, it relies on all those sorts of units to make them work. The Living Carpet is brilliant because if you run it with Termagants, you unlock Tervigons and you can have some really cool stuff. How good is the Codex in the meta? Let's look at it that way. How good is it in the meta as a whole? Well, it's good. Mostly. I mean, it ruins armies at short range. But it can get outranged, it can get out meleeed, particularly by Terminator heavy armies, or combat armies like Orcs can ruin a Tyranid's day. Assuming they get to hit, because Scything Talons are annoying like that. But they do well against Psyker armies, obviously, with Shadow in the Warp, and having a lot of Psykers themselves allows them to mitigate that quite well. But they can get cheesed out pretty easily. I mean, their vehicle killing skill is minimal, so tanks are a great counter to them. Their monster killing skill is actually pretty bad. I mean, yeah, they've got AP2 weapons on their monstrous creatures because they have Smash, but still not amazing, is it? Come on. So I think they're a good solid codex, and if you use them right, they'll win a lot of games, but not always. And they can be out-cheesed quite easily by newer codices. Overall rating, I would say a 6 out of 10 if you are new, and between a 7 and 8 out of 10 if you know what you're doing in terms of competitive viability. So that concludes this series of Codex analysis. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you found it really useful. In terms of the future series, be sure to comment down below with suggestions. I'm hoping to pick up a copy of High Fleet Leviathan from Shield of Baal, so as I can have a look at the other Tyranid units, like the Malaceptor, just so as we can complete the Tyranid series. I'm also hoping to do Chaos, Space Wars, and Kieran is hoping to do Harlequins for me. So, thank you for watching. My name is Michael for Tactica Imperialis, and I will see you all again.